Hello, what is up YouTube? It's Ismail Rodriguez here bringing you another beginner Python tutorial video. This time we're going to be covering functions. And yeah, without further ado, let's get straight into the video. Okay, so now after spending a mind-numbing amount of time on TikTok, we're now going to be talking about functions. So what are functions? And before I show you what a function is, I'm going to have to give you a definition. So the definition for a function is very simple. A function is basically a block of code that you can reuse. And if you want to use that block of code, then you only have to use a single line of code. So I think you can see how this is a benefit to us. So I don't know if you realize this, but programmers are actually quite lazy. They're lazy enough that they made functions so they don't have to type blocks of code, and instead they only have to type a single line of code. Pretty lazy, huh? And yeah, functions really aren't that complicated. Okay, teacher, sensei, I totally understood what you just said, but I'm a visual learner, so what does that look like? Of course, I'll show you real quick, Israel. So here's our example function. If you ever want to make a function, then you have to start it off with def. Def is short for define. And then from there, you put the name of your function. In this case, we called it my function, but you can call it whatever you want. And then you have your pair of parentheses, the opening parentheses and then the closing parentheses. And then from there, you have the colon. Your function is pretty much finished. What comes after that is the code you want to be reused. In this case, we have two print statements. And yeah, functions are really pretty simple. Yeah. Def. Yeah, pretty simple. Okay, so now we're just going to type out the function that we just saw and we're going to make sure that it works. So first we start off with the define. Now we put the name of the function. So the name was my function. You put the parentheses and then you put the colon and then you press enter. Inside of the function we had two print statements. One saying running function. And another one saying function done. So if you want to use this function, you simply type out the name, so my function, and you put the parentheses. And yeah, that's it. Now if you run the program, click on the green arrow, you're going to see in the output running function and function done. It's that easy. Dang, teacher, you is smart, teacher. You is smart. You is smart. No, Israel, I'm not smart. I've just done this for a couple of years now, so it's pretty much ingrained in my head by now. Whatever, sensei. You smart. Smart. Respect. Respect. So now that you've seen how a function works, let's look at a more interesting type of function. Now, usually other YouTubers, they show you some boring stuff, like a boring function, like whatever I'm about to show you right here.
Possible to have multiple arguments in a single function? The answer is yes. For that, you can write def function3 x comma space y colon.
Pretty boring, right? So that's why I want to make a function that's gonna make our founding fathers proud. A function that will make our ancestors proud. Our ancestors that moved from a third world country into this first world country where they had to struggle just to give us a better life. So we want this function to be grandiose, spectacular. So we're gonna make a function that calculates how much you get paid at McDonald's. Yeah, so I accidentally corrupted one of my files when I was doing the editing. So now I have to redo this part. So yeah, I'm happy about that. Okay, so now for the function. So we said we're going to make a function to calculate how much a McDonald's employee makes. So let's start off the function. So let's start off with the def. And then let's call the function McDonald's pay calculator. Okay, so what I want this function to do is that I want it to take in the amount of hours that the McDonald's employee ended up working. And then I want it to multiply the amount of hours worked times how much they get paid per an hour, so we can get the total amount of money that this employee ends up making. And notice how I said that I want it to take in the number of hours the employee worked. So how would you do that? So if you wanted to do that, it's actually very simple. You just go in between the parentheses and you put in a name for the variable. So we're going to use hours since we want to know how many hours employee worked. And now that allows the function to accept a single thing, which then would be referred as hours within the main body of the function. So what else do we need inside our function? So we need hourly pay. We're going to make a variable called hourly pay, which is going to have the value 16 in it for how much money is earned in an hour. And we also want total earned, which is going to be the amount of hours worked times how much money they make in an hour. So we're going to say hourly pay times hours. And notice here that I'm actually using the variable hours, which we didn't really define, but the thing is that it's actually defined right there in between the parentheses. And now when someone passes in a value with the function, it's going to be interpreted as the variable hours. And then we want to return total earned. And what that is allowing us to do is that it's allowing the function to pass out a value. In this case, it's going to pass out the value total earned, and we can actually catch that value with a variable. That way we can use it through the rest of our code. So now that's done, so let's start using it. So we're going to say McDonald's pay calculator, and we're going to say that the employee ended up working 10 hours. And if we run the program, you see that nothing happens. There's nothing there. But we actually want to print in the terminal how much money the employee ended up making. So first, to do that, we have to catch the value that is returned from the function, which was total earned. And to catch it, we have to put it in a variable. So we're going to make a variable called total, and we're going to set it equal to McDonald's pay calculator. And this is actually allowing the variable total to capture the value returned from the function total earned. And now, if we want to see if it's working, we can say print total, run the program, and you see right here that we get the value 160. So how exactly is this working? The way that this is working is that Python sees this and it says, okay, this is a function, and here's the code for the function and what the function is going to do. And then it goes down here and it says, okay, we have a variable called total, and it's set to the value McDonald's pay calculator, where we pass in the value 10. And it says, okay, that is cool, but what is the value? So then Python then goes to where McDonald's pay calculator, our function, is defined, which is up here. And it basically runs this code, and it says, okay, hours, what is hours? Hours is 10. And then it says, okay, hourly pay, all right, equals 16. Total earned is hourly pay times hours. What is hourly pay? 16 as defined up here. And hours, what is hours? Hours is the value that we passed in to the function, which was 10. And then we say, okay, so it'd be 16 times 10, 160, and we return total earned, which was 160. So then this function ends up being resolved to 160. So when Python resolves this function, it ends up looking like this. Total is equal to 160. And then we print total, and we get 160. It's that simple. Also, do note that you can pass in a lot more variables than just one into a function. You can pass in as many as you want. You could pass in maybe like minutes, seconds. And if you wanted to give those names, those variables values, minutes and seconds, then you just put in the same order and where you use your function, and we'll say we give it 4 minutes and 5 seconds. And how Python looks at this, it just says, okay, what's the first thing here? And we say Python sees it and it says 10, and it says, okay, what's the first thing in our defined function? It says hours, so it says hours is 10. It looks at the second thing and says, okay, the value is 4. What's the second thing in our defined function? It says minutes is the second thing, so minutes is equal to 4. And then it says, what's the third thing? Seconds. And what's the value? It will be 5, because 5 is the third thing listed. And then you can use these variables, minutes and seconds, in the same way that you use hours inside your function. And yeah, that's functions, and that is also the end of this video. So yeah, if you liked it, give it a like. If you liked the series and you want to keep following, then give it a subscribe. If you have any comments or suggestions, leave a comment. I actually like reading the comments. It makes this process a lot more interactive between me and my viewers. And yeah,